Hello, welcome. My name is Whitney Lee. I'm a developer advocate here at VMware Tanzu by Broadcom. And this is Alex.
Sweet. And I am a solutions engineer working in the public sector here at VMware Tanzu by Broadcom. So here with you.
Excellent. And I said I was going to put our names on and I forgot. So there are names.
It's official.
It's
We
very
told the truth.
We said we're going to establish trust at this beginning part of the thing. So what we're doing here today is Alex is going to teach me and by extension teach you about SBOMs. I know very little about SBOMs, and Alex knows a good amount more
At least
than
a little
me.
bit more. The audience will be the judge.
So let's start. I have one question right off the bat. And what does the acronym SBOM stand for?
Sweet. Software Bill of Materials.
SBOM, Software Bill of Materials.
Yep.
Okay. And before we talk about what it is, paint me a picture. I'm a relatively new learner. So paint me a picture of what the world was like before SBOMs existed that caused them to need to get created.
Okay. As a bit of a pithy joke, maybe to take us down like a little bit of a rabbit hole at some point, but I'd like you to imagine the world of 2023, and there is all like, so the joke I want to make is that like they're still not really in use as much as they should be. When they came to be, that's a good question. I don't know the answer per se to like the day that SBOMs became like that someone was like, I need a bill of materials for my software and not just one for what I don't know that exact day. It can't be that long ago, right? I mean, it's probably, I would guess, within the past 10 years, right, would be my thinking of when this came on the scene. I think the reason, to maybe try to answer more seriously, one of the reasons why SBOMs have achieved a bit of a like a mind share right now is honestly the presidential executive order that kind of mandated, more or less, that some of the various government agencies said, hey, this is during the Biden administration, so it's this period, right? So in the past 4 years, and they said, hey, like, we need to protect our infrastructure. We're noticing attacks. We need to know what's going into our infrastructure and into these things. I charge you, like CISA, the Center for, I don't know, Information Security Agency or something. I'd have to Google the acronym. But like, I need you to define what needs to be in an SBOM. And then I want everyone in the government, you have to have SBOMs. Like, that's what the executive order said.
So like literally President Joe Biden said, you have to have SBOMs. Like,
yeah. I mean, more or less that is kind of how that shook out. Yeah. As to my understanding, someone comment in the commenty thingy, telling me where I got that wrong. But as I understand it, there were obviously initiatives that predate that, exploring the efficacy and all of that good stuff. But I don't think people gave them much credence until relatively recently, when they're like, oh crud, like the U.S. government at least might require that we give them these things, and like, I guess we should make them that.
Okay, this is fascinating. So what you're telling me is it's not necessarily really solving a problem, only that like, or it was like you said there were some attacks that were happening. So maybe in this case, instead of telling me what problem it's solving, we could talk about what it is, and then we can talk about what problem it's solving. Because I feel like we're throwing it around a little too much without defining it.
Okay, sure. Okay, I think we could do it that way. I mean, truly, what it is not that complicated in its essence, right? It is an artifact that states what is inside of a piece of software. Because as we in the software business understand that when I deliver someone a piece of software, let's call it, R suite supply chain tooling or like developer tooling, that's what you, Whitney, buy is R suite developer tooling. But we all know that I didn't write everything that went inside of that by my own hands. It's just not how software is built today. There's going to be stuff that I got off the internet, a la open source. There's going to be things that I'm paying a partner for, be that, you know, like another vendor to bundle into my software, and all of that web. Truly, I mean, honestly, Log4j, right, is to take it away from what it is now to what kind of kicked this into real gear is, I mean, Log4j, for those that might be watching this that somehow are interested in SBOM video but don't know what Log4j is, those were that person. Log4j was this like vulnerability very deep down inside of some Java dependencies that have basically made you make like an arbitrary request to any service that was running Log4j, and like, boom, you were in it. Like I'm in it, which is the worst kind of vulnerability. I don't have to be authenticated, nothing. And so they were like, everyone was running around like, oh my gosh, patch your Log4j. And then someone was like, wait, but where is Log4j? I don't know where it is. What do I need to patch? And that caused, that's the problem, right? That the SBOMs aim to solve is someone could have then, in this hypothetical new SBOM world that we still don't really live in, if someone could query the SBOM database and say, tell me where all the Log4js are. And then it goes, and that pops out all these, where it is inside of our org. And then we can go to those individual pieces and be like, you have Log4j running, shut it down. You have Log4j running, shut it down, etc.
Okay, but that's painting a wonderful picture. Let me make sure I have this definition right. So an SBOM is an artifact that states what is inside a piece of software. Is that accurate?
Yes, yep.
Okay, so I have questions around this, around so many things. I have so many questions. So one question is, like, what are all the possible things that might be listed out in an SBOM? So you kind of like alluded to software dependencies, but can we be more colorful about like what kind of stuff is going to be? And then I guess a second question, and you can decide which order they're answered in, is like, what format is this in? Is it like a text file that's like a list of things? Is it like what does it look like and feel like?
I would say that by and large, a bill of materials, even in ye olden days when we were talking about like stuff being shipped across the seas, it would be some textual thing, right? Like that is, you would want it in some sort of list format. Now, I'm not in like the shipping game, so I don't know what format they list that, but the concept rings true here as well, right? But rather than it being like, I have, 5 crates with 10,000 barrels of apples or whatever, now it's, my software has these 10 packages. They are all this version. This is where they are. And there are other things besides that can go inside of the SBOM. There are like all sorts of things that are being appended and can be like added to this SBOM definition.
So some things that might be in an SBOM. Well, just to clear it up, is it SBOM like literally a TXT file?
No, if we're talking like actual file endings, and this may be you like burying the lead a little bit that you know the answer to this, because that was a very astute question, because no, and that's actually part of the complications with SBOMs, that there are different file formats that you can use, different standards that you can adhere to for your SBOM. So SPDX, which I'm Googling right now because I actually don't know what that acronym stands for. I'm just like trying to click into it. The Software Package Data Exchange is a common format by which these files can be exchanged. I believe the actual file ending of that would be like a .spdx file, but it also might be like JSON as well. I take that loosely, but it's not just like a randomly formatted text file. It's computer legible at a minimum, right?
Okay. So I'm going to revisit that and get it on the board, but we kind of have 2 threads going at once, and I want to see this one through. Yes. So things that might be in an SBOM. So we talked, like you said, open source software, like software dependencies, packages and versions. Help me list out some things you might find in an SBOM.
I'm going to read straight from the interwebs for an older version of SPDX, and it's not the most recent, but I think it will ring true to some of the base things. But package information, and this means, like in this case, it means like an actual something bundled that was distributed. Like we could think of like Spring, right? Like Spring Cloud Data Flow. That is a package, right? That would be in there. Files.
Would package dependency be a good way to say that?
I think that makes sense. A third-party dependency. I think part of the complications with SBOMs is that it's not easy to articulate this stuff. I bet there's a multi-page RFC that defines what is a package, and I'm probably getting it wrong right now as like defining what a package is.
I have a question even about this. So package third-party dependency itself is going to have dependencies. Like how many layers, how many of the onion are you peeling off in an SBOM?
I don't know. I can say that I have read an SBOM with my human eyes end to end all of no times. They are not designed for human eyes. So I know that when I see the output of an SBOM in a tool that aggregates it and makes it human readable, I don't typically see, hey, Spring has these sub packages inside of it. Like that is not a typical thing that I see output by these generated tools, but I don't know that that means that the data isn't there.
Okay. Because if you did have the log4j in one of your dependencies, it still is your problem as someone who's built on top of that software. So if this is the problem we're solving for, it should be in there somewhere, but the human doesn't need to. SBOMs are not designed for human eyes.
I intentionally didn't say anything because I've been really bad about pulling you all over the place. So I just nodded and smiled that time to be better.
This is itself. You said SBOM's a bit of a web, and so in the conversation. But okay, so package third-party dependencies. What else? You were reading something.
Files, which truly I don't know exactly what a file in this case would look like. I'm going to take that to mean like if you have something that's like an actual like executable, like something that is pre-bundled, not something that is openly introspectable like a package. But that's my guess. I don't know exactly what that would mean. It says snippet information. My context of snippets doesn't. I'm curious what that means for them. Like if it's like a GitHub related snippet of like code, so it's not actually, but it's attributable. I guess is the point there, that you can attribute it to somebody's snippet. There's licensing, which is that one is fairly straightforward. Like just licensing information about the various things we just mentioned. Relationships between these components. Annotations and review information.
So back to my question that you nodded about before. Do you know, like, is it like not only all the dependencies your software is built on, but all of the dependencies that software is built on, all the dependencies that software, does it go all the way down?
I don't know how deep the expectation is that an SBOM should go. I can tell you as a consumer what I want, and that'll like maybe we start there, right? One thing you will note is that there isn't, in what we just described, there isn't something that's like every piece of code, right? That's not like a field. Like every line in your code, I want you to annotate. They are saying for commonly known formats, packages, files, snippets, things that are attributable, we want you to call those out. And if I had to venture another guess, they would then expect you to be able to extrapolate out those dependencies. Hey, I see, because what typically happens, like if we're being honest, right? Like basically the whole reason that I understand an SBOM to exist, one of the largest reasons I should say, is for to enable CVE triage, common vulnerability enumeration. So the whole point is, well, I guess, are we ready to go down this rabbit hole? I danced us toward it. I'll pause.
SBOMs enable. And when we say CVE, we mean common vulnerabilities and exposures.
Oh, is it exposures? Oh man, I made a CWE maybe was what I was thinking. But you're right. You said it right. I was wrong.
You didn't say anything, so we would have never known you were wrong.
No, I said common vulnerability enumeration. So I definitely.
Oh, did you? Oh, I didn't hear it. So SBOMs enable CVE triage. Does that close that, or you kind of said it seems like you were maybe going to say more about that.
I could definitely keep going, but I want to make sure that we got through the contents first, and I don't take us down the so what are they for path too far.
Okay. Well, for me, I feel like this is good for the contents.
Cool.
And then one thread we had going before you talk about more about CVE triage is I didn't write anything down about the file format. I feel like those are the two directions we could head in right now. The file format or more about like as a consumer what you want to be in your SBOM.
Maybe we do the easy one first, which is the file format, because I really don't think it's all that convoluted. In that, like, I'm looking at the SPDX now, and in no surprise, right? It's a .spdx file, but you can format it with a number of like more common extensions like JSON, XML, or YAML. And that is just one of the standards, XPDX. And an equivalent would be Cyclone DX, which is another SBOM format. I don't know of too many more than that. I'm sure there are, but those are the main ones that I run into.
Okay, I'm already switching this. So there are two main ones, SPDX and Cyclone.
DX,
but those, we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, two main ones. SPDX and Cyclone DX.
Capital D, capital X.
Thank you. And are these both like like the ends of the files, what they would look like?
I am looking up Cyclone DX now. It certainly is that way for SPDX. I would expect it to be the same for a Cyclone DX file. This should really be like double clicking in people's heads that humans never interact with these by the fact that I don't even know the file endings. Because typically you're going to get an SBOM, and best case scenario, you're going to have something that says, this is how I view them. And then you make them press play together, and then you never look back.
Okay.
But let's take a look. It's defined.
And then while you're looking that up, these are easily converted into JSON or YAML, you said?
Yes, the actual file ending for the SPDX would be .spdx .json .spdx .yaml.
Okay.
So no, like interestingly, Cyclone DX chooses a different recognized file. Well, it's actually, they share the same. You could just do like standard JSON or XML, or you can do a .cdx.json or .cdx.xml. So it is similar but different in that, like, it doesn't support a YAML format for Cyclone, but it does for but they both could do JSON or XML. They both support having a mixed file ending of that, like .brand.json or .brand.yaml or XML.
Okay. So I think now we have two threads are leaving to one place, because this is like enough for me to understand kind of what it looks like, but now I want to understand, like, from these files, how is it consumed, which is kind of actually where we were here as a consumer, what do I want in an SBOM?
Yeah.
So how does it feel to interact with an SBOM?
It gets contentious, to be honest. Like, and I don't want to get too far into this, but there is a strong level of conflict in the community right now around what the efficacy of SBOMs are. There is a contingent that says you as a customer should want these. Why do you not want to know? Why do you not want, like, the government to say you must include SBOMs, and now everybody benefits? Because, you know, if it's mandated for the federal government, typically that's like a large enough customer where people just do it for everyone, right? Why do you not want that? Now you get this really sweet file that you can put into your tool of choice, and you can have it, look for CVEs or even licensing info, or make standardization decisions so you don't have as much sprawl, whatever it is that you think CVE is the big one, right? Where you're just like, you have some sort of notification setting of like, hey, I've noticed new CVEs for Spring. Now I need to go query my little SBOM database and say, where is all the Spring? Now let's triage it. We talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Pause there. That's the one side of the house.
Okay, so I want to write this down, but I think first I want to, you mentioned about the federal mandate that who's the federal mandate pointed at? Who is now being forced to create SBOMs?
My understanding of the current state is that the first executive order said we need to define SBOMs, and if we look at it, it's actually very, very minimal. I should have started with that. The like SBOM definition from executive order, like it's very minimal. So they said, hey, we need to define this. And then there's another executive order, and I don't even know if it's an executive order per se, but that says, hey, for the federal government, you need to buy things that have SBOMs. Because it hasn't gotten to the point yet where it's like a law of like software. I don't even know if that's like within the realm of something that could be lawed, but that is where it is today. Like I work with the public sector. It's not uncommon that someone will be like, does your thing make SBOMs? And we're like, yes, it does. And that is a thing that someone could want. I don't think that it has achieved like the nirvana that I think the backers of this initiative would have wanted yet, of truly everything ships with an SBOM and we can, do all of that yet.
So what the US government has decreed is that all software that's consumed by the US government must have an SBOM. Yes?
That is my understanding. I'm looking at the EO 14028, Improving the Nation's Cybersecurity, right now to make sure I am not lying to our faithful audience. But it says this is the one where it says, hey, we need to make changes to the way that stuff is bought so that providers, I'm really summarizing what is intended for lawyers, but they're effectively saying like, yes, we need to make a thing that requires people to tell us what is in our stuff.
Okay. So I can hear you. Okay. Okay. So now with that statement, we have two camps. One side that's like, yes, why wouldn't you want this? This is helpful. I can, yeah. And then the other side is,
this is not super effective is maybe the polite way to state their argument, right? You obviously like as in all two-party fights, they I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's a fight, but both sides have valid takes in this. They would say it doesn't have high efficacy, this SBOM push.
Okay, so as an SBOM consumer, I might be angry about it or I might not. But regardless, I have to have it. Is that true?
I would rephrase that to say, as an SBOM consumer, I may or may not care that, like, I may or may not actually care to leverage the SBOM, given how I do my security posturing and what I lean into. Okay.
So that's great. So then we have the people who do want to leverage SBOMs. And then what does leveraging an SBOM look like?
So it's really two parts. First part is I just have to have my SBOMs. I need to find them. Where are they? How do I get them from whatever software I'm working with? And the second part is putting it into a system, because again, they're not for human eyes, right? Like no one is going to just like scan all their SBOMs. I have to have a tool that makes sense of them and gives me the right amount of situational awareness to make decisions on said SBOM. So get them and then put them into something is really what they do. And then I guess the third step is then taking action based on what the system in 2 tells us is going on.
Okay. Use a tool to interact
To
or not.
visualize, represent, interact. Yeah, all those are good.
Any or all?
All. I mean, obviously they'll take any, but the idea is all.
And then the third step?
Take action, based on that SBOM.
Great.
Which typically means, go ahead.
Yeah. Is it generally, like, you're talking about SBOM singular? Would someone be doing these 3 steps to one SBOM, or I'm picturing it more like a suite of like, here are the SBOMs we're using, but you tell me, is it something you go through one at a time?
Well, part of the difficulty is you're not going to get this. SBOMs don't, like, there isn't a requirement that every single product has, www.vmwarebybroadcom.com/SBOMs, right? That you can just plug into a system and then you get the SBOMs for everything, right? It doesn't work like that today. So you have to figure out, where are those SBOMs for this piece of software, whether it be something we build internally or something we buy or DIY. Like, you have to find them, and that in and of itself makes it not just like I can just go and swoop up all my SBOMs and plop them in a place, right? It is an act of caring and feeding to discover where they are and make sense of what SBOMs actually matter, right? Yeah, I'll pause there.
Okay. So then, so they're hard to find, but once you do find, you get them, you can use a tool to visualize them, and then you might want to take action based on what you learned. What are some examples of actions you might take as when you learn about something from SBOMs?
Yeah, let's take it to one of the most common, or even sticking with the log4j analogy. My tool that I chose in step 2, part of a feature that it offers is it checks for CVEs based on my SBOM. It just looks through my SBOMs. It's connected to GitHub CVE repository or NVD, the National Vulnerability Database, or whatever. It's connected to some place that talks about vulnerabilities. And then in step 3, I just get little beep boops that say, oh, hey, this thing you have is no longer looking good. It's got something bad. It's got a log4j. It's got a 10 out of 10 CVE. And then you have to decide what the action is that you should take.
So it's more about, it sounds like it's maybe more about the tool than it is the action. Like what are examples of what tools can do with your SBOMs? And then we might be able to infer the action part.
Yeah, I mean, the most common one is just CVE triage, like scanning, like I told you. I mentioned, is that it would do some amount of just diffing. I see this package, I constantly am checking for new CVEs for that package.
Okay. So for this whole conversation, the context is CVEs. SBOMs help you, you could almost even say, tell me if I'm right, if what I'm understanding is an SBOM is an artifact that states what's inside a piece of software with the goal of identifying and mitigating any CVEs.
That is, to my knowledge, the most common use case. Clearly, that is not the only use case, because there are these really, really smart people that have put together the long list of things that I read off the internet to you that was probably only partial, where it talks about licensing and reviews and all these other things you might want to see. I just meet my personal experiences. I have not run into that in the wild, where many people are using SBOMs in that way. But you certainly could imagine a world where somebody wants to double dog dare make you, Whitney, the software builder, wants to triple check that what you're putting out only has valid licensing information, and I am not using the thing because I'm getting sued and I want to make sure I don't have bad licenses or something, right? Like there are clearly lots of other, or I should say not clearly, but like I believe there to be a lot of other use cases. Just CVEs is the most common one that I am aware of.
So the tool is commonly used to find CVEs.
CVEs, yeah.
Okay. And then the action would be to whatever, to whatever you need to do to not have that vulnerability that's the CVE exposes you to.
I know I've thrown about 1 million forks, but what you just said is one of the most important forks of SBOMs.
I just said it so casually, and we really need to drive it home and write something. Well, what would be a good? What should I say?
So I'll talk for one moment, as I've done probably too much already, and then you'll get us back on track. That was really important what you just said. I saw that I have a CVE and I need to do whatever it is to fix that CVE. That's a big problem. Like what do I need to do? Is like a really big issue. Like I actually don't know what I'm supposed to do. If this is Whitney's sweet software that I've got SBOMs for, the only thing that I can really do is hit up Whitney and be like, Whitney, like, what's up? Like, I hate that I'm having to come to you to tell you that I found a piece of thing in your software. But could you tell me what I should do here? Because that's, I'm paying you for your sweet software. Another thing is if it's something that I manage, then I could go do my own discovery of like, is it something that I am impacted by? And then I can decide if I need to make a change or not.
Is this fall under remediation?
Yes. Yeah. Triage and remediation. We're still kind of doing both, actually. We are. The first part of this is actually triaging, which is the most complicated part of the process, I would argue, because in the example that I just outlined for you, I kind of led us to, you it's M-E.
I'm pretty sure I got it.
Perfect. It's very difficult to triage. So difficult, in fact, that a subsequent, like, I'm going to call it a standard, and forgive me, the people out there in the world, correct me if that's not the right word, that they created a whole system that goes with SBOMs for this triage information, and it is called VEX. And that is Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange, VEX.
Okay, I'm going to start a new column. So before we get into VEX, which I want to write down, we have these 3 steps, which to an outsider like myself seem simple enough. You get your SBOM, you use your tool to visualize and interact with your SBOM, and then you take action. That feels very straightforward to a noob like myself. And then what I'm hearing along every step of the way, you're like, getting an SBOM. This part's really hard. Like, use a tool to interact. Like, okay, we use that tool to find that CVE, and then like take action. This part is also really hard. So now we're specifically talking about triaging CVEs, and let's define triage in this case. Like, triage is just identifying like how bad the vulnerability is and what actions are even possible. Okay. So I would like to, triage CVEs. So that means, identifying how bad it is and what possible actions, what possible ways to remediate. Oh no, that word, I have to spell it again.
We can just say with fix. Make it go away.
So I identify how bad it is and how to fix it. I like fix better. It's more accessible too.
Yeah, well, this is a level 100 talk at best for SBOMs here that we're doing. So someone out there is like, no, remediate is important because there are these XYZ things. And I totally respect that. But, you know, I can't say how it's different. So we're going with fix.
Since in the spirit of this being 101, let's write common, let's write this out. Vulnerabilities and exposures. It's still on the board. Yep. Okay. So this is where we have a tool called Vex.
It is another format, another document like an SBOM.
Okay. So will you please define, well, first of all, what does Vex stand for again?
Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange.
I had to pass a spelling test before they gave me this job.
Oh, to be honest, I do a lot of whiteboarding myself, but I stick with just the boxes because I could never be brave enough to do what you're doing now. So
vulnerability and what's Vex?
Exploitability.
Exploitability. Exchange.
Yeah, with a lowercase e, capital X, because we want to drive home that it is VEX.
Yeah, I was gonna underline.
Oh, that works too. You're good.
Okay. Okay. Vex is, what is it?
Is a tool to pass on let's just like read the definition that they provide. Oh, good. It is to allow a software supplier or other parties to assert the status of specific vulnerabilities in a particular product. So it is a tool to see the status of vulnerabilities. I think they did that better than I would have done it on the fly.
Okay. I'm going to put it here. Okay. So now in our steps, we've used a tool to find the vulnerabilities, and now we use another tool, Vex, to see the status of vulnerabilities. So CVEs are like an official thing that are recognized by the community, that you can find like a website that lists the CVEs. Yeah.
I do want to nitpick your words slightly just to, if it's useful, but like technically the SBOM didn't do anything for me to tell me about CVEs, right? That was step 2 and 3 of our process that told me that I have CVEs. You technically could take an SBOM and combine that with a Vex document, and then it would tell you that like, hey, there are these CVEs for this part of your SBOM, and this is the details about it. You could combine the two like that. It's not very common that I see people like proactively thinking I'm going to go look at the Vex. Typically you're like nudged in that direction, but.
Okay. Oh yeah. The government said you have to have an SBOM, but it didn't say your SBOM has to be vulnerable, prove you have no vulnerabilities.
Yeah, no, I mean, because they can't mandate that, right? Like that would be a big deal. But so you had to make them, but whether or not you want to leverage them is totally up to you. Which, yeah. Look at you! You're already starting to go to the other side of the argument. We haven't even gotten there yet. Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm starting to wrap my head around it. Thank you for this. Where do you want to take this next? What's important once you have you see your status of vulnerabilities using Vex? Then what do you do? I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about Vex and see if this additional context is useful, because as much as I've kind of been joking that there's two sides of the argument, they both have validity. And one of the things that's cool about Vex is that it gives you a mechanism to notify your community in a computer-driven way, not me just like posting on a forum. Like in a computer-driven way, I can say, hey, this CVE is going to show up for this package in Whitney's suite software. We, Whitney Suite Software Core, have looked at it. We deem it not exploitable for these reasons. Please ignore it. And we're not going to fix it. Right? We can, that Vex gives us a system by which we can like officially state that, and it can be or computer digestible. And that's a big deal, right? Because we can also say things like, Rutrow, like, we're looking into this. Here's a way that you can actually like mitigate that vulnerability without actually us like patching it or fix it. We could also say, hey, we patched this, upgrade your stuff, right? There's a number, the just as I described with the SBOM formats are very verbose. Similarly, is the same thing is true of Vex. The file standard is quite verbose. So you have a lot of ability to pass on really important information. So you got it.
We're working on it.
Yep. And I think, like, you know, for the one side of the argument of SBOM's value, you combine these things. And again, assuming like I can't speak to the like licensing and all the other things you might want to do with an SBOM, but for this use case, which is the most common one I'm aware of, that's pretty cool. Like in theory, that's actually pretty cool, right? Because I know this as someone that interacts with customers, that they say, hey, I scanned your stuff and now like the security team is not happy with me. What's going on? And it makes me feel a lot better if I'm saying, hey, cool, like just pull the file, just look like it's in there, like tell them to put it in the system and they'll see, like, you know, you need to upgrade or whatever it says, right? And it removes this potential, what I think has existed in software up until this point, where somebody says, hey, I'm getting hacked, or I've got this problem, or am I exposed to this issue? And us as vendors are just like, good luck. I don't know, right? Like, I'm not on the hook for that problem for you. Good luck, right? Which is obviously not something we'd want to say or anything, but you get the point.
So back to that first question of like painting a picture of what the world looks like before this existed. What I'm imagining too, and tell me if this is correct, but like there's a CVE. Whitney's Suite software makes some software that isn't so sweet in the way that there's some CVE, and then vulnerability scanners. It's a very big, popular company, of course, and vulnerability scanners across the country start picking up on a CVE, and all of a sudden, my Suite software company is inundated with people asking the same question over and over again. And so, for me to be able to proactively have my machines tell their machines, there aren't even people involved. For proactively, as people find the CVE, they also find an explanation for what's happening with that CVE. That seems to have tremendous value.
It certainly would be. It's very few places you find this perfect nirvana. Whitney's Suite software is definitely, they are well above the curve, because there are some interesting like legal nuances here, right?
Okay.
CVEs, like once I say I know about a CVE, some lawyers will be like, well, now I'm accountable for it. And so there's like, this is part of the reason that there's a bit of the other side of the argument is like getting people to want to do this is a little tricky, because I get we want secure software, but I also don't want to get sued through the nose. So it's challenging, right? Like, and I'm not a lawyer. I'm not saying that like I subscribe to either view, but it is something that I've heard, you know, and you're just like, what do I do here? Do I tell people that I know about these vulnerabilities? Do we just like let it ride?
Better to beg forgiveness, pay ignorance. Yeah, I see.
I mean, you will see right now that the current trend, at least in the U.S., is much more litigious in this space, right? Like we've seen CISOs like, you know, going to jail lately for not disclosing things, whether that right, wrong, or indifferent. It is a part of the current climate at a minimum. So it's a very real topic, and it's only going to become more real as we see, at least in the US, where we see some of this starting to sharpen.
I also see a world where it's like, okay, now that these tools exist, now that you even know they exist, therefore you're on the hook, you know?
Yeah.
It's your fault if you're not taking advantage. Yeah.
It is a tricky debate around this particular topic and what to do as a company right now. And I'm empathetic.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I am too. Fascinating. Cool. Okay, what's next?
I think that we have reached the end of the relevant, this is what makes SBOMs great argument. I think we've done a sufficient 101. I would love to see the 201 or 301 that we get from the PhD SBOM experts. But I think this articulates, hey, from a high level, there's a couple standards. There's probably more than we've listed here. They come with a lot of information about what's being bundled. It's really great if, as a consumer, if you can get one, particularly if you can get some sort of VEX information with it, so you can be really proactive because you're probably using it for CVEs is probably what you're going to use it for, your SBOMs. And if you can bundle all that up, you can generally get a pretty decent picture of what's going on and how to treat things.
How does Whitney's Sweet Software Company get an SBOM?
You make one.
How do
in
I
your
make
case,
one?
because tooling is probably the right answer, right? Like you almost certainly don't make one by hand, right? Again, they're not for human eyes. They're not made by human hands. So, like here at VMware Tanzu by Broadcom, like we have tooling that when it builds our containers, that it automatically introspects the things that it pulls in and it generates an SBOM for me. And then it's automatically bundled into the containers that we ship around. That's how we do it. Now, you could do, not everyone ships containers, so you could do it, any number of ways, but that high level flow is how you make one.
Are SBOMs, well, I think I know the answer to this, but so SBOMs, you talk about SBOMs and containers, but presumably SBOMs are created for other types of ways of distributing software. Okay. And so whatever tool you're using to bundle your software, whether that's into a container or a binary or whatever you do, that's how the SBOM might be created as part of that. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no way you're writing it by hand. I can't say that because I'm not everyone. I don't know what everyone has done. But if we find in the comments that someone's like, no, I write SBOMs by hand, I'm going to take note and I'm going to be like, that person does not get paid enough. I tell you that. So, but.
Awesome. Great. Well, what do you think is a good thing to talk about from here?
We should talk about the con. We've been pretty pro.
The con.
It's time to get to the other side of the argument. And it really, for me, this is my version of it. I don't know if this is what the community would say, but we've laid out what you would do with your SBOMs. And now the final straw is we get to this point. We've got our SBOMs, we've got our VEX, we know what's going on. And then I'm like, okay, now we're gonna change you from Whitney Sweet Software to Whitney Sweet Software Consumer. So Mrs. Consumer, can you tell me where all of that software is running? And can you tell me your currently what your risk exposure looks like based on what you're actually doing in your various environments across your landscape? Can you tell me that with what we've given you so far?
So part of the problem is it's limited to the scope of the application, and it doesn't take into account how the application interacts with everything, all of the infrastructure and supporting services and everything around it.
Nailed it. I have no idea what's in prod. What network is it on? What else is around it? Like how if this container that has this low vulnerability is combined with this environment that's got this really bad stuff going on, well, now that low is actually really exploitable and really not good, right? That daisy chain of things is actually is very tricky. And there's a number of tools and stuff and folks that do this as an offering in the community. There are some within the Tanzu portfolio. There are others out in the wild that do this, but they all boil around, let me take a look at the actual environment and what is really happening today. I don't care what it was at the point of time when you downloaded the SBOM and put it in the system. I care about right
Mm-hmm.
now in my environment. Really tell me what's going on, right?
Okay, so let's make a little list of what it doesn't account for infrastructure.
Where it's running. I mean, that's a version of infrastructure, right?
Environments, is that a different way of saying that?
Yeah,
Infrastructure.
environment is probably a bit too broad. I mean, we might have to like
Okay.
iterate through this list a bit, but
Uh-huh.
it doesn't account for like network access. It doesn't account for is it even running at all, right? These are different ways of kind of saying the same thing, but they're all, I'm not entirely sure how to make this a list.
Other apps it's interacting with.
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
Like what data,
what
data is actually being leveraged by the software and how important that data is, right? What might seem like a low in a certain set of software is actually a very critical thing if it then exposes my KFC secret recipe or something, right?
Okay. Let's say, for example. Okay, cool. So that's a problem. So is it like false confidence is really the problem here?
Yes, a version of that. I think, and again, this is me quoting what I believe folks might say, but I think the argument then that somebody that's pro SBOMs, what they would say to this is SBOMs can help with all that. You can stitch all that together with SBOMs. Like SBOMs can be a part of that journey. And the con side is going to say, I'm doing that today without SBOMs. So
Yeah.
this is a tool to solve a problem, but it's being solved by other means, but those means aren't being mandated, whereas SBOMs are. And so it's a bit of a...
How's it being solved without SBOMs?
A lot of agents, right? Or not even like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be agents per se, but like that concept of let me look at certain environments and actually like, and deduce what's going on in those environments based on atmospherics of metadata about what's happening there, whether it be looking at actual like Terraform code or looking at an actual like runtime, cloud environment or an on-prem environment, or, but actually looking at the real things and doing something with them. Every vendor that does this is going to have their own special sauce of how they implement this. But I think what those folks would argue is they would say, hey, the most critical workloads of today, or at least like the people that we would argue are doing this well today, are doing this in production without SBOMs. And they're doing it with the tooling that we just described.
So SBOMs can be strung together to do this.
SBOMs plus, right? I don't want to speak too much because we might have missed something in what is included in an SBOM. But as far as I'm aware, there's nothing in an SBOM that says what the data is that the person is using to put through that app. Like, I don't know how a vendor would provide that with me. They don't know anything about what I'm doing.
But also it can be, and it probably already is being done. How about without SBOMs?
It should be. It can be. I think clearly it's not being done enough. Hence why the president of the U.S. had to come out and say, "I need something here." I think the con side would say, "Well, I don't know if mandating SBOMs was the way to achieve the goal here, but it is a way that we could."
So, I need to say something. I have a question. Hold on. I have to finish this. So, what is the it of also it is being done? Like, identifying CVEs in ways that things interact with each other? Like, what is the end goal? To do this, like to do what?
I'm trying to pull up the executive order again. because the title of it is Improving the Nation's Cybersecurity. That's the name. So that is the it. Improving cybersecurity. That is the it that they are trying to do. So cybersecurity can be improved without SBOMs if we were to swap out the it in that statement.
Okay. I love the word improving, because improving can be so minor and still be an improvement.
I have an SBOM. It is quantitatively better than where I was before.
I have improved cybersecurity.
Albeit not very much, but I have improved it. Which, you know, we're laughing, and I don't mean to belittle anything about the SBOM initiative, because there are things that I think are really cool. But I also do think there is strong credibility to the other side of the coin too, in that if you're going to improve something like cybersecurity, and we're saying SBOMs are an improvement, it needs to be evident, like, in what way is that improving cybersecurity? And I think what I'm hopefully not brutally misstating for you and for the people that watch this is it's kind of up to the reader with SBOMs today of how you are going to show that is improving your cybersecurity. You certainly can, but it's not a de facto, like, do this and now I'm more secure, right? Like, it doesn't work that way today with SBOMs.
I could see some argument being made for a couple of things. One is like standardizing tooling and a way to communicate about these things. Does SBOMs help with that?
That is certainly, I mean, that's the whole initiative right now, right?
Yeah.
Or I would say that's a large, at least to my eyes, that's one of the largest things that has been discussed for the past few years is what is the right format? What are the right things that we need to include in all of these like standardized formats? And maybe we're just early in the curve, right? And like now that time has been spent to really define the schema and the spec, we're going to start to see some really amazing tooling being built that really puts it all together, and you're just like crushing it, right? I don't know.
Because the standardized tooling helps you, like, you know, interact, like all these different aspects interact with each other. But then even across companies, you could, as like Whitney's awesome software is consuming Alex's awesome app, amazing app. I like the 3As.
There you go. A little
and then
alliteration.
we're both using SBOMs in the, so therefore I like it's my software works better with your software because we're doing the same things.
It could.
But I like it.
You have to trust that I am giving you the right information with my SBOMs and my VEX, and this is like the fundamental crux for my personal opinion, is I'm like a big trust but verify person, and everything about this is trust. There's not a whole lot of verify in SBOMs as a standalone item. They are a lot of trust, whereas the folks that are doing it today are doing a lot of verifying. They're very heavy on the verify, very low on trust. Like, I don't really care what you tell me is in here. I'm going to look at it, and if it looks bad, I'm going to come say something, right? And so in some ways, these two could come together, right? If people are getting pressure,
that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Could be
like if you have a standardized tool that everyone can agree is trustworthy to build an SBOM, and that tool can then somehow sign off, like there's some sort of attestation that's signed, then I can believe Alex's awesome app is going to be good for Whitney's rad software. I'm forgetting. So I like the promise of the standardized tooling and the agreements on ways we can work together and trust each other and verify each other. I guess I'm probably being optimistic. But
I think the reality is that no one knows right now. No one knows. I think it's early. And I think that is the honest answer, is it's still early. There is a world where you can probably do both trust but verify, right? And I think this is pushing hard on we need to have a way to say what's there, and the other side is going to push hard on, okay, well, we also need a way to double check that it's real. And then ideally, by the fact that we've both been working, it becomes even easier at that mesh point, right? Because now it's like, yeah, like I found this thing and you already told me about it and it says this thing and that's verified to be true in my environment. And like, we're all good. Like everybody's good. I've got your answer. I've got mine. And we're all happy. I never had to send an email to anyone. Everyone is just moving forward and life is great, right?
Holding hands in a circle, singing a song together.
Totally possible, right?
I want to live in that world. So I'm actually surprised to hear you say that you can't trust SBOMs because they're generated from tooling. Is someone like have incentive to then like maybe they have Vex and Vex is spitting out a vulnerability and their answer is to remove that part of their SBOM rather than to fix the vulnerability? Is that what's in danger of happening?
That could happen. I think it's less malice
Nefarious.
and more ignorance is what I think it would be.
Yeah.
It's not like internal to every piece of software. There's going to be like a number of ways that you do things. We know this, right? We work with lots of enterprises. Not all software is built the exact same way. People try to standardize. That's really hard. So I think it's just like it's in those gaps where I think people will get in trouble.
So if there's a thing I might not trust as a consumer of an SBOM, it's that whatever tool made the SBOM maybe left something else, maybe didn't go enough levels down into the dependencies of the dependencies.
Exactly. Plus. Vex is not computer generated. There is it is computer generated as a file format, but we have not achieved the nirvana yet that a computer is able to triage our vulnerabilities and determine the exploitability or the needs for patches. Like maybe we get there if if you're riding the AI LLM train right now, but we are not there yet. That like a human actually has to, and that is a huge burden. Like it's a good one, most would argue, but like, hey, people, you should be looking at the software you ship around and actually like triage your vulnerabilities. But again, there's always two sides to every coin. There are a lot of noisy CVEs that come out that are totally irrelevant. So it ends up being like on the order of thousands of things humans have to now triage because people are going to see that they're there. They're going to see the vulnerabilities and they expect you to have an answer. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that way.
Humans have to choose to inform. Did I get the right?
They have to choose to interact and do the vexing, right? Like creating the outputs, doing the triaging, and then the publishing is the easy part, right? That's when the computer comes in and stitches everything you did as a human together.
To vex and inform. I'm making vex a verb.
I'm here for it.
All right. Choose to vex and inform. So that's where it's likely to lose trust. That's the step where you might lose trust.
I mean, truthfully, I don't know that I would. I don't know yet that I have a strong opinion of one or the other because they both like that. That gap of missing stuff in your SBOM, I think, is real. I don't have data on either front. I just know that that's probably tricky, and it's also I've definitely seen that it's tricky to do triaging. I've done that myself as a dev. When you get this vulnerability report, and it's like 1,000 vulnerabilities, and you're like, "What is this package? I've never even heard of this." It's like some weird third-level dependency that somehow, if I use like leftpad.flippity-flop in my code, then I get owned or something, right? And you're like, "What is this? I don't even know what this is," right?
What kind of keyboard has flippity-flop?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's on mine right here.
I need it. So what do you think, what are some takeaways maybe that we should put in this last little bit? Or are we to the takeaway section? Is there something else you had plans?
The only thing that's worth like noting is we kind of talked about the SBOM generation. We talked about the vulnerability part of triaging, right? There is like another arm to this trio, and that is like the salsa guarantees. It's out of Google, but like what is it? Supply chain salsa. What is it?
SLSA, right? SLSA.
Supply chain level, or sorry,
That's
supply chain levels for software artifacts. And that is
ooh.
like a maturity that you can guarantee around how you deliver software. So it is loosely coupled to SBOMs, and this warrants its own whole train of conversation that we shouldn't try and smash into this.
Uh-huh.
But the important thing to note is like the SBOM says, hey, this is what's in my software. Vex says, this is what like they say about that software and like whether it's good or bad. Salsa has a number of mechanisms by which you can actually not just trust, but like with like signing and stuff like that, say a number of things about how that artifact came to be. So it's
Ah,
another piece of the puzzle that says, hey,
okay.
I can tell you that this was built by me because it is signed by Whitney
Okay.
Software Company's key, right? And it is
Yeah.
definitely built by us, not built somewhere else. And I can make a
Mm-hmm.
number of other attestations based on the tooling that you choose. It's still early, relatively early days for tooling in that space as well, but it is included in that journey of not just saying what's in it, how vulnerable it is, but lastly, it's also being like this is its journey that it went through in my supply chain and what that artifact.
Will you
I think
help
that's.
me write a
Mhm.
definition for salsa?
I'm trying to think of the most concise way to state this. The one on their website is too long for this board. So
Thank you.
I am going to say it is a framework for
Okay.
like building for securely building and delivering software. Because the operative words here, and we can like refine this, is that it itself is a high level definition, but as a
Uh-huh.
part of it, as a part of achieving
Mm-hmm.
a high salsa level,
Mm-hmm.
you start to introduce some of those like guarantees about what's happened, like signing and things like that. That comes in the higher levels of salsa salsa maturity. There we go. That's the word.
Okay. So when you're talking about the attestations and signing it, how does that relate to salsa? Like signing an SBOM or your software in
In this case, you
general?
probably wouldn't sign, but it relates in the sense that, like the way that salsa works is it defines a number of things that you should do across your process of how you build, how you like code, build, and deliver the whole kit and caboodle, how you
Uh-huh.
do all of that. And it gives you like maturity levels of how well you are doing at each of those. So let's take a very easy
Okay.
example. Git, right? Like I am using source
Uh-huh.
code for my my code. Good job. You're
Uh-huh.
like
Source
the
control.
lowest level
Great
of
job.
maturity. You've I mean,
Yeah.
awesome, truly awesome. But
Yeah.
like not super great yet, because if something were to come up internal to your org, you see that, Whitney like made that commit, but there's
Uh-huh.
nothing super concrete about that. Like it's just somebody was logged in.
Yeah.
Somebody easily could have faked being Whitney.
Yep.
So one of the, and I'm maybe speaking a little out of turn because it's been a while since I've looked at every single maturity level, but an example would be if we introduce code signing. So now, like in order for me to commit code, I have to like use a key instead of just saying like, this is my password, right? This is kind of a poor example. I'll own that later in the comments. But the idea being that there's a number of things like that across the journey of actually building the artifact and packaging it up and shipping it out the door. There's all of that in the flow that you can achieve different levels of maturity on.
And then who's achieving the maturity? The piece of software or the organization who made the software?
Technically it is the organization, right? And that is where it's not
Okay.
exactly analogous to SBOM, but where it ties
Uh-huh.
into SBOM is that a number of the outputs of the salsa like supply chain can be included as attestations and stuff like that, whether it be in the SBOM or near the SBOM or in the artifact itself. Those can be done. So like, let me just pull up the little levels.
And it's based on their supply chain security?
The way they do their supply chain, right? So yes, there are like components of how secure they do certain things.
Okay. Okay. That's probably enough. But like, so to summarize, we talked about making an SBOM. Let's write this down. So, well, first let's figure out making an SBOM and then like using that SBOM to do something with your CVEs, discover more about them and do something. And then what would you say? How would you summarize this third step?
Like, if one is what's in the software, the other one is what's vulnerable about the software. This is how was the software built or like delivered, really. How was the software provided?
Oh, okay. Like what was the history of how it got to where it is now?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And this one is the most nascent of the three concepts we've talked about. And is still working through how it will live in the world.
It's the most what of the three concepts?
Nascent, like the most new, the least.
Okay.
The least.
The thing that assigns maturity level is itself immature.
Yes. It is actually quite good. I really like the recommendations from as a software producer, but it is the least mature from like having a very obvious way that you would use it as a consumer.
Okay. So what umbrella would you put these three steps under? What's my heading?
Maybe like artifact composition or something to that effect. Or I mean, it all boils up to the use case of you want secure software. That's really what it all boils down to from an output.
Okay.
Or like a goal.
Three aspects of
three tools.
Secure.
Yeah.
Oh, tools. Yeah. Okay. I like it. Three tools for secure software. For secure software story. I want it to be a story because it does feel like a story.
I like that.
So first we have SBOMs. So like what's in the software? I'm going to write over my face. It's happening. I'll try a little bit to keep a window for me. What is in the software? And then VEX. So SBOMs allow you to see the vulnerabilities. VEX allows you to do something with the vulnerabilities or understand the vulnerabilities.
Yeah, understand is the right one. Yeah, the SBOM enables you to be able to more easily see the vulnerabilities. Right, VEX would be what do I need to do?
Do you think it's important here to say SBOMs, what is in the software, including vulnerabilities, to mention the vulnerabilities?
No, because that's actually not true, right? The SBOMs don't include the SBOMs. That's part of the CVEs. Wow, I just said like 5 acronyms. I'm pretty sure I didn't get it right. SBOMs do not include CVEs. You can use a tool to see from your SBOM what CVEs are related.
And then those tools, we didn't actually talk about any specific ones, right? Or
there's so many. No, VEX is not one.
Many.
Like Trivy, Gripe, like there's so many tools that will take an SBOM output and then like run that against a database. It's pretty straightforward, right? Like I see this package, this version, go query this database, right?
So VEX tells status of CVEs and possible actions.
Yep.
Okay. And then salsa where the software came from, the many places
The
of the
software's
journey.
journey. Yeah, exactly. It is kind of a bucket, so it's not exactly the same as the other two, but it is
Okay. Cool. Excellent. Is there anything else you feel like you want to say, or should we do a recap?
I think we've officially run out of space to have you both in the screen and write, so it's no better place to stop.
I mean, if there's important stuff to know, I'll write over my face. It's more important.
No, we're good.
Okay. So we opened this by talking about, well, first of all, we got to say what an SBOM is. It's a software bill of materials, and it's an artifact that states what's inside a piece of software. So I asked to paint a picture of what the world was like before SBOMs, and you're kind of like, ooh, you know, not unlike the world we're living in right now. they're, they're only just now being adopted. And part of why they become popular quickly is that the US government has decreed that all software consumed by the government must have an SBOM. They didn't say they're going to do anything with that SBOM, but it has to exist. So some things that might be in an SBOM, it's meant to make up everything everything that went into making your piece of software. So that's like packaged third-party dependencies, maybe dependencies of those dependencies, in addition to files, snippets, annotations, review information, readmes, licensing, relationships, all that stuff.
And more.
And more. But they're attributable things, like we can say where they came from, and they're in common formats. And so, among other things, you can use lots of things. You can use an SBOM for many things, but a very popular thing is to use an SBOM to help you know what kind of CVEs might be present in your software. So SBOMs enable CVE triage. And then CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. So one question I asked, which might be a silly question, is like, what is an SBOM? Is it just like a big text file? So we went into file formats a little bit. And one thing that's important to note here is SBOMs are not meant to be, they're not made by humans, and they're not meant to be consumed by humans. So we talked about SPDX file format versus Cyclone, but basically you don't need to worry about that part because it's not for you. It's not for your eyes. But you as a human, if you want to, you can leverage SBOMs. Some humans feel strongly that they should, and some humans feel so strongly that they shouldn't. We take no opinion here in this show. There are 3 steps that seem easy, but they are not. One is getting the SBOMs. That is not easy. Apparently they're all over the place, and they're not really standardized where you store them or even what file format they're generated in. So finding your SBOMs can be difficult. But if you make it past step 1, then you have step 2 to use a tool to visualize, represent, and interact with your SBOMs. There are many, 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 many tools that can do this. So that's just on you to choose what you want and what you hope to get from leveraging your SBOMs. And number 3 is take action once you have visualized your SBOM. And this is also very, very hard to do. These 3 easy steps that are not at all easy. So usually in step 2, when you use a tool to visualize your SBOM, you're using it to find CVEs. And then in step 3, when you take action, what you want to do with CVEs at least is to figure out like which of your CVEs, like what's actually a real vulnerability. There could be thousands of CVEs, and some are important and some are not, and it can be hard to know the difference. So you probably want help triaging, and then once you do know which ones need to be remediated or fixed, then you fix those. That's on any CVEs found. So that's where we have a tool called VEX enters the picture. So VEX stands for Vulnerability Exploitability Exchange. And it's a tool that helps you see the status of vulnerabilities. So it's going to help you know which ones actually need fixing. And not only that, but you can proactively inform software consumers about the CVE. So people who are using your software, you're like, hey, I know it's there. Don't worry, it's not important. Here's why. Or, hey, it's patched, or here's instructions for patching. Or, hey, we're working on it. We know it's there. We're working on it. That all seems like pie in the sky, but I guess there's some. I know there are some legal nuances there. And all of this stuff is very human. Like human has to choose. Well, really, all of it. Like to choose, they want to find the CVEs in their software. They want to inform about the CVEs. Some people might rather pretend it doesn't exist until it's in their face. And that falls, I guess, into the two camps of people who leverage SBOMs versus people who don't.
We know which side you're on now, Whitney. Because I don't know that they'd say they want to just wait till they're smacked. But
yeah, I do prefer to know about things and address them in life in general. But also, I don't have to deal with lawyers. So bringing lawyers into it might change my mind.
That's fair.
The SBOM, the people who are maybe pro not doing anything, anti doing something with SBOMs, they might say that SBOMs, one of their limitations is that they're limited to the scope of the app itself. So SBOM can account for like where your software is running, like what kind of infrastructure it's on, network access. It can account for how other apps it might interact with or what data it interacts with. You can string SBOMs together to do this, but it's probably an organization has already figured out how everything they use works together with or without SBOMs. And the goal is
a mature, good one
that
doesn't want to get smacked. There are some that sit in the middle and aren't doing anything. So that's the real bad one. The other ones, maybe we can...
And the goal is to improve cybersecurity, even just a little bit, as long as it's improved. So then we talked about a third thing, which is salsa, which is supply chain levels for software artifacts, but it's a framework for securely building and delivering software. So it provides recommendations to software providers to things they can do to make their software supply chain more secure. And based on how secure that an organization's software supply chain is, then this salsa framework will assign a maturity level to an organization. And so with these three tools, this can tell a story about software. So the SBOMs can say, hey, here's what's in the software. And then another tool can say what the vulnerabilities are. And then VEX will say, hey, here of these vulnerabilities, here's what's important and needs your attention. And here are some possible actions you can take. And then Salsa can describe the software's journey. So it can say all the steps that the software has been through and the software and dependencies have been through that have brought it to where it is today when you're consuming it. And that's it. I learned so much today. Thank you, Alex.
Oh, thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to my summary?
Negative. It was great.
Okay, wonderful. Well, this was very fun. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing your knowledge today. And thanks to everyone who watches this recording. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.